We're coming back for another exciting session on this stage. We're delighted to be here in Birmingham at the security event, and building, for those of you who were here on the previous presentation on the evolution of the distributed model, we're going to ask about the VAR of the future in the context of a very cheeky question, very, very simple question. Everyone's a VAR, yes or no? And the theory behind this is that everyone is actually being forced to add value to their products. In 2008, we weren't allowed to say downturn, we had to say current economic climate. So I dare say in the current economic climate, maybe adding value is a good thing. I'd like to introduce our panelists, and then I'll ask them to say a little bit about themselves and the perspective they have, because it's a very, very important grouping that we have here today. We have Darren Chatterley from Vodafone, and we have Marc Carney from Cisco. But, gentlemen, why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll get into why we're being so provocative with this question. Darren, tell us about yourself.
Is this on? Yes, yeah, good. Hi, Darren Chatterley. I work in Vodafone as a global product manager in the cybersecurity area. We provide or are increasingly developing managed cybersecurity services for small and medium businesses. And we're very much around how do we simplify that. So cybersecurity simpler, or in other words, simply safer is one of the things that we're really moving on to really help businesses, and particularly in the small medium business area, do that. I previously worked at BT for 24 years. I've been in Vodafone about 18 months. And very pleased to be here in Birmingham.
Fantastic. And Marc, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hi all. So Marc Carney, I'm a go-to-market practice lead for security at Cisco. My role ostensibly is to bridge the gap between our product development teams and our field, so trying to simplify and reduce friction from the sales process, understand what security products we're bringing to market and how that fits with our overall security messaging.
Okay, fantastic. Right, so we're talking VAR, and at this event, which is traditionally a distributor, alarm system, CCTV access control type of an event, adding value seems to be very, very natural. But I guess we want to know, are there any VARs, any Pureplay VARs? But before we do that, Darren, what is a VAR? Like, what do we mean when we say VAR?
Okay, I mean, I'll probably bring it into comparison with managed service provider as well, to an extent. So my view of a VAR, they're value-added reseller. So they're taking an OEM product from a manufacturer, and they're looking to add value to that value-added reseller, i.e. provide additional capability on top of the technology itself that the customers can make use of. And that would tend to be traditionally fairly transactional, so they might help a customer set up that particular service or that product and help that manage that. Again, more often than not, the customer will pull in that value-added reseller to add that value, but tend to manage it themselves. Managed service provider would tend to operate more in more of a strategic relationship, and offer value and day-to-day management of a customer's solution, whatever that technology solution might be, so the customer doesn't have the hassle of managing that. I think we might get into later where that pans out and how that's developing in terms of managed security services.
Okay, I like it. And Marc, I guess maybe we can then transition that to, well, are there any VARs out there still? Because it seems like it's a Del Boy model adding some extra value. It just doesn't feel very current.
No, I think there are definitely VARs out there. There are definitely organizations out there, and especially in our global partner community, that are really adding value to our customers, especially across all segments, really. I think from a global perspective, Cisco doesn't have the ability to get really intimate with each of the different sectors, and we do rely on our global partner ecosystem to find that intimacy leverage the products that are out there in the market, leverage not just Cisco products but third-party products as well, and aggregate them together to achieve that customer's outcome. And it's really important that we support those partners in doing that and growing.
But Marc, surely you've just used the magic word, partners. And therefore, a partner could be an MSP. A partner could be an MSSP. A partner could be an alarm system distributor. A VAR, in the classical sense, was supposed to be a wholesaler of IT subscriptions and adding value on top of wholesaling. If this was a pure play MSP panel, people would say, are there any pure play MSPs left? But I guess that's what I'm getting at. Is there anyone that wakes up and says, I am a VAR?
So I think there are definitely those that are still in the stack 'em high, sell 'em low type environment and wholesaling licenses or whatever. Still with the hardware intensive ecosystem, there's definitely still a requirement for that logistics and warehousing and being able to get large volumes of hardware out the door. As we transition into this more virtualized environment, actually that requirement is reducing. So I think traditional VARs are having to adapt. So I guess in answer to your question, are there any pure play VARs out there? Probably not. Are they trying to identify or craft their own identity to understand where they're going to add value in the future? And it might be to build themselves or reimagine themselves as a managed service provider or a managed security service provider. So pure play VARs are probably still out there. Do I think that they're looking to the future, to how they add value to the consumer industry? 100%, yeah.
I like it. And I'm unloading it a little bit because I'm kind of trying to allude to the evolution of the VAR, but I like that approach. But then, Darren, let's take a step back. Whether or not there's a pure play VAR or a service provider, what is the value that they're trying to add? Like, when they take a subscription, when they take a per head license, what is the value? Like, what are they trying to add? That's what I'm trying to get to the grips with.
Yeah, sure. And I think it goes back to is there any pure play VARs? And I think particularly in the cybersecurity market, even less so maybe than in other areas, because other areas of technology have moved to cloud. That's true, but certainly a lot of cyber services have recently, and it plays very well to that model. In addition to that, cybersecurity is so complex. There's shows like this where all the vendors will be cyber, and probably 3 or 4 times as big as this, and every different vendor will be there. There are literally thousands and thousands of vendors. Cyber is traditionally seen as very complex because it is, and the vendors and the industry and just the atmosphere and the landscape of the solutions have proved to be very technical. So for me, it's about taking the technology and taking the need for a customer to protect themselves, protect their data, protect their employees, protect their customers, and try as much as possible to take the technology out of it, to take the complexity out of it, and deliver something that's really, really much more simple, particularly for those small, medium businesses that don't have the time, the resources, the budget, the scale, the inclination. One of the things that I heard recently, the accidental security person or the accidental security lead, there's nobody in a small, medium organisation who's a CISO. They may at best have a network manager. It might fall to somebody in legal to a certain extent because there's a compliance angle. And they end up owning this and they have not a clue about it, but they know, and they increasingly know it's important. So it's about trying to, for me particularly in that small, medium business area, trying to simplify it and make it accessible, know that they're protected, and utilise technology, but not that they have to manage it, because it's tricky.
I like what you said about the accidental CISO, because there are lots of people, the army of one, They are the CISO, the COO, the CFO, right? And there are other companies where someone has just become it. Maybe they were a developer, maybe they were an architect, maybe they were a manned guard, and now they are the CISO somehow. And so that's the ease that the tools are seeking to appease. Now, there are tools out there, and some people talk in common parlance about a tool that is so successful because they employed games designers to do the graphics interface. And it's a really snazzy interface, right? And we make fun of that. But it would help someone who was uninitiated. So is that what we're talking about when we're adding value? We take something and we think, do you know what? My end customer is technical and therefore needs something, or is not and therefore needs something else. Is that the value, Marc?
So I think finding the value is linked to that customer intimacy. And large OEMs like Cisco, like I said, they don't always achieve that level of customer intimacy. We'd like to think we do, but we have global scale. So especially where we have cultural differences or we have diversity of skill sets in different regions. So the challenges that we have in India are very different from the challenges that we have in North America and Canada and a lot of the EMEA countries as well. So what we need to make sure we're doing is bringing in the talent and bringing in the diversity, and where we don't have the ability to bring that into Cisco, make sure that we are identifying the partners, identifying their skill set, so they can go and achieve that customer intimacy that perhaps we can't in the region.
That's right, because we talk diversity of thought, diversity of everything else, but actually economies of scale comes into that, because if I have a service provider, I don't need maybe Kubernetes container securitization 24/7, but I might want a fractional part of that. Conversely, maybe I don't need a certain type of alarm every day, but I need a fractional portion of that. So that economies of scale, maybe that's what the value is adding.
Yeah, definitely, and we will scale through those partners, being able to accept that those partners bring their own skill sets, identify those, and be aware of what value they bring in each region, I think is incredibly important. And we do that mapping across our account teams globally. So identifying where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and where we need to either pure play technology, or we can then start building on services and solutions capability as well, and actually empowering those, whether it's a VAR or it's a MSSP, or whether it's just a niche partner that wants to grow, actually giving them the platform to grow with us. So it might be looking at new product development. So recently launched our XDR platform. How do we then empower our partners globally to take the XDR platform, start wrapping services around it, and actually build their own identity, build their own service provision and their own service capability around that.
And maybe no one can speak to this, but one of the things that we're told that people would like very much is the ability to scale up subscriptions and scale down subscriptions at a whim. That would be very handy, because then if you have more business, then you can increase, and if you have less, you can decrease. Now, whether or not that's feasible, because everyone needs to have certainty, I don't know. But, Darren, maybe we don't have to cast aspersions, but are there any false VARs out there? We've talked about resellers that actually find loads of ways to add value and therefore become service providers because they just do. But are there any people who are reselling but not adding value or not integrating? Is that a possibility in today's world?
Certainly, I would say not so much now, I think, because customers are recognizing increasingly that they do need that added value, and they're going to be looking for that. They're going to be actively seeking that added value, and they're not going to engage with partners who can't provide that, who can't help them to realize whatever purchasing decision they're taking, whatever investment they're taking, and actually make it deliver for their business. Obviously, especially in challenging economic times, where businesses are really tight on investment, they're going to have to really pick the right sort of investments and make sure they get that value. So I think it's becoming increasingly difficult to do that. Yeah.
And as I think Marc said before, you've got to know who you're adding value for, which is why the report that the MSP business model is failing or being gobbled up is always overstated, because the local 50-mile sweet spot distributor, where they get to know their customer base, I don't think that will ever get old, will it? It's attractive. You're there. You know your customers. You could be the Coventry VAR. I know we're in Birmingham, so I shouldn't really say that, but you could be that. Earlier today, we were talking about the convergence between CCTV, access control, biometrics, getting integrated into the IT realm. Marc, do you see convergence in that space as I've kind of wondered?
Yeah, no, I think as we start to aggregate more data, especially biometric data, and as our ability to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning in a more commonplace scenario, I think that will enable us to consume those vast volumes of data and actually drive some more meaningful insight from it. I think the challenges up to now is the data it produces is so vast that we can't actually do anything with it that's going to add value. So by identifying where we can leverage those advances in technology and actually drive more data insight, I think we'll probably get better at merging the two. So using biometrics and access control systems to identify user behavior. It could be to identify insider threats or external threats into our organizations, just to kind of further protect our organizations from those social engineering walk-in type threats.
And that would give a use to the data, wouldn't it? Because if everyone's a node, you've got your man guards with their sticks going bleep, bleep, bleep. Okay, what do you do with that data? How is that useful? Are you going to employ a games designer to put a snazzy graphic design for management? Maybe, but what's the use case? So conversely, Darren, since we're in Birmingham at this wonderful event, lots of distributors, lots of CCTV access control, biometrics, do you think of them maybe as a route to market for some cyber products, much as they might look at you as a route to market for some physical security products?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would say, again, moving to small, medium businesses, they will have more familiarity and more contact with more physical security providers, whether it be access control, security cameras, CCTV, lock manufacturers. They will be engaged, and they see that as security. Cyber is newer to them. They probably don't know who to talk to, but they're already speaking with their local security provider, whether it be an alarm company, somebody who provides them with security equipment and technology around physical security and building security and that sort of thing. So absolutely, they will know them, they will trust them, and they, I'm sure, would entertain conversations with them about if they knew that they could actually help them with their cybersecurity needs. It would be a trusted person that they would go and speak to. I'm sure about that.
And I mean, if you can't talk to this, then that's fine. But it just occurred to me, in your day job, do you sell products through distributors, and do you receive products through distributors?
We don't tend to. We tend to have our local partner markets, and then we have our individual countries that we sell to and through, but not as a big thing. But one of the things we're very, very focused in, as I say, is focusing really on those small, medium business customers. We don't think anybody's done that at scale from a managed service provider perspective. And it's a very interesting discussion, I think, and thought process around actually, in terms of our channel to market for those customers. We've got a good relationship because we've got a lot of mobile and connectivity with those customers. I think certainly for other managed service providers, even maybe Vodafone, that it is another channel to market.
I like that, and you speak about partners, because maybe the local partners are the value add, in that you've got your SLAs with them and you've got the relationship with them. So it's like checker trade, but like you're the advocate. So Marc, I guess then, it's the next logical areas of adding value tomorrow's managed security service provider, because thus far people might have got their heads around, okay, an IT distributor, I can kind of get it, it's not my bag, but I like it. Pureplay MSSPs, for me, seem to be a logical hub for everything. Like literally, they could say, do you want executive protection? Do you need bodyguards? I've got them. Do you need TSEM? I've got them. But equally, do you want EDR, CDR, XDR, MDR? I've got that too.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge with the MSSP market is identity and creating your identity. The worst thing that managed services providers or VARs or distribution can do is actually confuse their identity by saying yes to everything. Now, we rely on typical value-added resellers to, not necessarily from a managed services perspective, but take disparate technology, take third-party technology, and it might be a Zscaler or a CrowdStrike or a Cisco Secure Endpoint, and actually bring that together for the customer from a technological deployment perspective. So understand how those things fit together in the customer's narrative. Where we find MSSPs can work better is actually as they start to build those service provisions around it. And it could be like, for example, managing a secure web gateway. It could be managing a VPN solution. And if when they are or a firewall, for example. So when you're actually managing that device or that piece of hardware or that technology, and you're managing feeding and watering it and make sure and it's configured to best practice, that's not necessarily where I would consider a true pure play managed security service provider, because there might not necessarily be any SLAs or KPIs that are built around that. So really what they are value adding, whatever they're doing, they're value adding to it. So what I would expect from an MSSP or an MSP is defined service descriptions or defined SLAs and outcomes, and with a contracted period as well, and potentially with penalties in there as well for failure to achieve on those commitments.
And the key word for me there, I love jumping on keywords, the key word for me there is identity. Are you confusing your identity? Because if I go, here, look at my Rolex watches, and then actually some apples and oranges over here, it's not a coherent message, is it? Much as I would like it to be, because I've got this sort of image of maybe the VAR of the future offering anything and everything. Maybe identity is key.
Yeah, there is a tendency for a lot of MSPs, and I run my own business for 2 years. Relatively unsuccessfully, but I learned a lot during that period of time. And the biggest challenge I had was crafting my own identity. Now, what was it that I wanted to achieve? So at the time I was doing virtual CISO consulting. I was also trying to build an MDR platform on third-party technologies. I was trying to understand, with my technical director, I was trying to understand how we can bring something to market that is disruptive. We ran out of money and we had to close down, and I joined Cisco, and it was happily ever after. But it's really important for me at that time, and there was this really strong compulsion to keep saying yes. Can you supply this license? Yes. Can you, get me some, Cisco switches? Yeah. Can you get me some Fortinet routers? Yeah, I can. And then I would go out and I'd build my own ecosystem, and I'd busily go around trying to get the best price. And more often than not, a Vodafone would undercut me anyway. So it was intensely difficult. But when I started to create my own narrative and create my own identity, things became a lot more straightforward. It didn't go to plan, but that's just the nature of things, really.
Well, thank you for sharing your testimony. It really brings to life the challenges of being a VAR or adding value. And you mentioned identity again. The advent of, people say, let's break down silos. Actually, if you broke down all silos, you'd have a pretty weird business. But more than that, sometimes we should build silos in specialisms. Like we have the healthcare service provider, because they've got very different requirements. They've got the legal MSP. I've even seen it with automotive. And if you specialize, maybe that's the value. Maybe. But Darren, where does this then leave us? Because ultimately, VAR is a form of channel. And I haven't seen the word channel pop up a lot today, but I've seen the channel a lot today. I hope that makes sense. Where does this leave us with this quest to add value and the channel? Should we form more partnerships, different partnerships? What kind of parting wisdom should we give our audience?
I think it's, for me, I mean, it's a great experience from Marc, and the identity point I think is really really key. Absolutely, this is all hugely complex, and all of the technologies, and I think being really focused on doing something and doing really really well is really important. I think for organisations, companies, VARs, or MSSPs or MSPs who are looking to diversify, a good way of doing it is around having those partnerships. So I'm not saying we can do everything, but actually I can do this part, and I can actually I have contacts and I have knowledge and I have ways that I can get you to meet the other parts of your requirements. And I think everybody at that point, within their own area, because they're more specialised, they really are about adding value. And probably ones that are doing that referral, maybe their value is about understanding the customer. They really know their customer really well. There might be a mate of theirs, as you say, they're in that local area, they've known them for years, and they trust each other, and actually they know the customer's business very, very intensely, and are able to understand that and articulate that. So that's a real key part of value that a big company like Vodafone is more difficult to get to, and in terms of having that intimacy.
But it's a positive message, isn't it? Everyone is a potential partner. You want to put your best foot forward. You want to do referrals. It takes the network to defeat a network. That lovely phrase that keeps on coming up. Not today, but other places. Marc, what are your parting thoughts? If people were to go away and say everyone's a VAR, is it a correct statement? What should people go away from this panel with?
Yeah, I think everybody has the ability to reimagine and reinvent themselves and create their own value. That's what I try and do at Cisco every day, trying to add value to my colleagues and my peers and the partner ecosystem that we have. And I think if the value-added reseller does exist, the value-added person also does exist. But you've got to find your own identity as well as your identity within the organisation that you work for, work with, lead, and that's what I aspire to do every day, is try and find my value, and go and just work on those strengths. Not necessarily, I'm not one for identifying weaknesses. I'm more one for identifying strengths and working with those.
Great, the value-added person as well. I like that. That's a great place to end on. Please do check out the MSS network, everything we do. We are delighted to have you here. Lovely to be back in Birmingham. So please give Darren and Marc a big round of applause, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.